So one of the things you might notice is there anything that you're motivated to do? Presume you're motivated to eat, although perhaps not. And I'm not being smart about this. Partly what I would say is two things. You might need some smaller goals. You have to shrink your goals to the point where you've established a plan forward that consists of steps that not only you would be willing to take, but that you would take. And so some of that's humility. It's like, man, I'm stuck. I can barely do anything. It's okay. Like, well, I'm laying in bed for 7 hours a day. Well, could I lay in bed for 6 hours and 6.5 hours tomorrow? Or while I'm in bed, could I do something somewhat useful? Could I read a book? Could I read one page of a book? Could I read a paragraph of a book? You have to find those steps forward that you would take. I really think it's useful to make friends with something like a Google Calendar, or whatever calendar program you might want to use, and start designing days that you would like to have, because that's the right way to use a calendar. And everyone out there that's listening, you should use a calendar to structure your days, because if you know what you're doing tomorrow, it decreases your anxiety substantially, because you need that kind of structure. You need a pathway. You need to have a map, and you need to know where you're located on the map, and you need to know how you're moving forward. And that gives you hope, because you're moving towards goals that you regard as worthwhile. And it stops you from being anxious, because you're not entirely directionless and lost. And so learning how to manage your time is useful. And you can start with a calendar. You can start with simple things, like you can put in when you're likely to go to bed and when you're likely to get up. And regulating that's useful. That should be relatively ritualistically consistent. It's very difficult to get your life in order if your sleep-wake schedule is completely random, or if it's not aligned with day and night, and if it's not aligned with the normative practices of other people. And so you may have to learn to get your sleep-wake cycle regulated properly. And then the same with your eating schedule. Those are very basic things. And you can do that badly, but that's what you want to approximate. 3 meals a day, let's say, because that's what people do normatively. And then you have to add small goals. Now, if that doesn't work, like if you can't make the goals small enough to achieve, it might be that you're not being humble enough with regards to your conceptions of your own ability. But you can tell if the goal that you put forward is a reasonable one if you're actually implementing it. Because if you're not, then by definition, it's not a reasonable goal. Like let's say you're sleeping all the time and your room is just a bloody complete disaster, and you think, well, I should clean up my room. It's like, well, maybe you can't, but maybe tomorrow you could hang up 2 shirts, or you could move 2 shirts from your bedroom to the laundry room. Or you could bag up a bag of dirty clothes that you could conceivably take to a laundromat. And you just do that one thing, If your room's a catastrophe and you do that one thing, and then you did one thing like that for 15 days or 20 days, maybe your place would be in order. And so the trick is to get the trajectory right. And if that doesn't work, then you're going to need to talk to somebody. Maybe you need a partner that you can discuss these things with, where you both have a commitment, like a mutual commitment to attaining a certain set of goals. Your action on your observations of the outcome of the actions that stem from that decision. You've decided to look at things in a certain way. So I could say, I've decided to do what I can to say what I believe to be true, because I have decided that, to believe that, to assume that, to have faith in the proposition that there's no better way forward than the truth, no matter what it looks like. And that's the thing. That's why the decision of faith is necessary, because it gives you a particular angle on the evidence. Maybe I say something I believe to be true and I get in trouble. And then I might say, well, the fact that I got in trouble indicates that saying what's true wasn't the right thing to do. It's like, no, not necessarily. It might be that saying what I believe to be true was the right thing to do, despite the proximal outcome. You have to make decisions about how you're going to interpret the facts. You have to make decisions about that. Those are decisions of faith. And so then you decide what you have faith in. Well, here's some things that I would like to have faith in, if I could manage it, if I could be strong enough to manage it, let's say. I'd like to assume that existence is worthwhile and that we should all work for its furtherance and its benefit. And you say, well, is that true? Well,
There's a lot of suffering in life. There's a lot of suffering associated with consciousness. You could make the case that there's so much suffering that the whole game is suspect. And that's a valid claim, but it's not a claim I want to make. So I'm not going to live out that claim. I'm going to try to live out the alternate claim. All things considered, I think that would be better.
You're not disciplined if you just do something you want more rather than something that you're doing. That's not discipline. That's maybe that works and great. If your life is working out that way, great, man. But that isn't discipline. Discipline is when you want to do something right now, and instead you think, no, I'm going to forestall my gratification, maybe forever, but certainly for a very long period of time, medium to long period of time, and you concentrate on something that you think will bear fruit in the medium to long run. And so you look into the future and you decide that by making today a little less impulsively pleasurable, shall we say, you'll make tomorrow a little bit more secure and productive. And then you actually do it too. And that's difficult, you know. And people watched the successful succeed and the unsuccessful fail for thousands and thousands of years, and we thought it over and we drew a conclusion. The successful among us sacrifice. The successful among us delay gratification. The successful among us bargain with the future. You wake up in the morning and you think, okay, this could be a good day, whatever that means. You don't know, right, what a good day is, but maybe you've had a couple and they're not so bad, and so maybe you think you could have another one, but you don't know, and you think, okay, you ask yourself, and this is meditative, what is it that I need to do today so that this would be a good day? And your brain will tell you, it'll say, you know that bill that's hiding under 5 pieces of paper on your desk? You should haul that sucker out and pay it. Or there's something you're avoiding that makes you anxious that your brain will pick on right away, and it'll say, you have to do these, whatever number of commitments today, and if you do them, then you've fulfilled your obligations. And if you listen to yourself and do the difficult things that yourself tells you to do, the idea is you don't have to compute the utopian future, because following what it is that you tell yourself to do every moment is the best path to whatever the best outcome is.
You don't want to do it. That's why you've been avoiding it. And so then it's right in front of you. And it's like it's some little trivial, horrible thing that you're not going to get a pat on the back for, and no one's going to give you an award for it. But then you go do it. That's kind of humility, I would say. And then you keep doing that. Well, anybody can do that. And that's associated with these great evils, you know, in this way that we've already described. It's like you're constraining, you're improving your character, and you're constraining the kinds of actions and perceptions that you have that are going to make you sick of life and work against it. Because failure does that. That's the Cain story. It's like, keep screwing up, man. See what happens. If you think that isn't going to make you bitter, and if that isn't going to make you vengeful, and if that isn't going to make you work to hurt people around you, or at least not to help them, which is the same thing, then you're just not paying attention. Everyone knows that's true. So, well, that's responsibility, right? And then, so you take on this great task of putting yourself together. It gives you life meaning. And that also helps you be buttressed against the fact that there's lots of suffering in life and there's lots of malevolence. It's like, yeah, true, man. Absolutely. It's worse than you think even. But you can do more about it than you think. You know, there are systems, neurological systems that underlie your experience of negative emotion, and there are neurological systems that underlie your experience of positive emotion, and they're separate systems. They obviously interact, but they're separate systems. So, but the positive emotion system, well, there's two of them, but one of them sort of kicks in when you get something that you want. So, you know, you're hungry and you eat, and that feels good. And so that's kind of the simple one. But there's a more sophisticated one that I think is even more active in people. And it's the one that tells you that you're moving forward towards something worthwhile. And that's actually the one that gives people that sense of meaningful engagement in their life on a moment-to-moment basis.